Anything I needed, I could have. You know, if it came to racing, you know, needed a new set of tires, go get a new set of tires. He was always there, and you know, just that, you know, support that you can't have unless you know, have undying love.
I think that at the time, they were spending somewhere around $300,000 a year, and the average team budget was $1 million.
We were a home run team. We had no money. We had basically had Steve Chalice, myself, Greg, and Scott Steele, who was a mechanic who worked for me during the week, and there was the four of us.
Rick had his house mortgaged. He had, I believe, his garage was mortgaged. His wife's house that she lived in prior to their meeting, that was mortgaged. Everything was stretched to the limit.
That's why Greg, you know, he didn't get the car too messed up, because we didn't have the money to fix it.
It was very difficult on Rick. I know that it was probably the most stressful, difficult time of Rick's life.
Despite the limited budget, in his second year of Indy Lights, Moore finished third in the championship. Then, just in time, help arrived in the name of Players Forsyth Racing. The Moores met with Jerry Forsyth, and Greg was brought on board. It was a decision they would not regret.
Our first test was at Firebird Raceway. So Jerry Forsyth came over, and I always had my stopwatch going, and Greg came by, and it was 47.11, 47.11 on the stopwatch. And so the next lap he came by, and Jerry says to me, I still had the stopwatch. He said, oh, you forgot to click it. And I said, no. So I clicked it. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I need a different stopwatch. This one that goes to hundreds. We got to go to thousands if we want to see the difference.
In 1995, Greg set a record, winning 10 of 12 races. It was time to take the step to the kart series, but Greg would not take it alone. His engineer of 5 years, Steve Chalice, would go with him.
It was an amazing relationship. It was a type of two brothers working together.
These guys roomed together. They shared a room all the time. We were there when Greg had his motor coach. You know, Steve slept in the front part and Greg slept in the back part.
If Steve Chalice would have said turn right on an oval where you're supposed to turn left only, I think Greg would have turned right.
Well, I don't think he would do that, but just about anything else, probably. It was a very special time that we had.
This foundation helped make for a sensational debut.
Look at Moore almost down to the grass as he challenges.
As a reporter, you live for seeing events like that because it was so out of the ordinary.
He was 19 years old in his first IndyCar race and really could have won it.
But look at Greg Moore, locked for the moment, and now he's passed.
When I saw him going through on those corners and passing Al Unser Jr., all these guys in the outside, I said, well, definitely this guy, it's something else.
The basic of the story was, made a foolish mistake, was penalized, was set back, he was now a lap off the pace. He came back and he passed everybody.
He showed right away he had the speed and he had the courage and knowledge to know when to race and when not to race, and he was impressive right off the bat.
In his third kart race, Moore made it to the podium. By the end of the season, he'd have 3 trips to that stage, but not a victory. Greg would have to wait till next year.
Could this be the day for Greg Moore and the Players team from Canada? Moore thinks he has it won with his fist in the air. He takes the checkered flag.
Again, it would be a first. At 22 years old, he was the youngest driver to win an IndyCar race. Emotions ran deep that day, but probably none were deeper than those experienced by Rick.
His father was his best friend.
He was his, not only his father, but his supporter, his financial backer, his manager, his coach, everything.
One memory I've got is from the one time that Rick wasn't there. He had developed pneumonia.
Rick and I talked, and his doctor had sort of said he shouldn't fly, so I said I would go. Anyways, Greg did not want to pull up until that point. And sure enough, Rick wasn't there. Greg goes out, wins the pole. I had him on the telephone, of course, during the pole run, and afterwards I passed the phone to Greg, and Greg, of course, put the media aside and talked to his dad about it.
And then Greg immediately came to be interviewed by those of us who were there, and you know, tears were in his eyes, and he said his dad was crying at the other end, you know, and it was kind of like, we did it, Dad, we did it.
He had always, all the time, a great respect for Rick and a great admiration, but both they were very hard people. very demanding on themselves. And I'm sure that he told me more times that he loved Rick than the time he told Rick, maybe.
There was more celebrating ahead for Rick and Greg. Moore had his second kart victory the very next week. Greg was earning the respect of his fellow drivers quickly, and at the same time, their affection.
There are a lot of stories. Some of them is better on tele than on TV. Rick has always the image of Greg being his little son, and like my dad, he has the image of me being his son, so we don't want to spoil that image.
When I first came in the sport, a lot of the race drivers didn't really talk to one another. It was kind of like the other driver was your enemy. But I think Greg instilled a kind of a mentality of, hey, let's race on Sunday and we'll party on Sunday night,
Greg was the first guy and the first ever guy that got me drunk.
Everybody sort of gravitated towards him, and he was the organizer of the parties, and he had so much energy.
Max Pappas, Tony Kanaan, Dario Franchitti, and Moore were christened the Brad Pack. Close friends, they stayed at the track in their motorhomes, sharing stories, pranks, and dinners. But Pappas was never impressed with Greg's culinary skills.
You take out this bag of macaroni and cheese and say, wow, man, this is like, I thought that he had a dog, so he was going to feed the dog. And he opened this bag, he put it in the pan, cooked the things, and he started eating it. I say, wow. You see, in Italy, that's like fashion violation.
But Max would eat his words and macaroni and cheese as well. Greg's special diet brought him a victory. While Moore made friends among the drivers, he did not forget his best friend back home.
Greg was the king of the cell phone. I drove across the U.S. and for a good portion of the trip I was in the middle of nowhere, so my cell phone didn't work, and I was going through upstate Pennsylvania, and I looked at my cell phone and I had 19 new messages. It was just different stages of the party that they were having in Finland and Italy and Germany, and I mean, the guy put more miles on a cell phone than anybody I know.
It doesn't matter, how famous Greg became or whatever, Al was always going to be his main guy.
Greg's biggest thing was, let's see how much fun we can have with anything we're doing, and he was just stirring the pot.
He's my best friend.
There was always something going on with a rental car, whether it be, I used to hear stories that they drill out a little hole in the lights and fill it up with some type of really explosive gas, so that when somebody turns the key over in the car and the lights come on, that the headlights explode.
It wasn't all fun and games during Greg Moore's third season. He worked hard to claim 2 victories, bringing his total to 4. He finished 5th in the championship, his highest standing yet. 1999 began with promise. Greg won at Homestead, but the rest of the season was a different story.
We had the Mercedes engine, and the Mercedes engine was very slow and not competitive at all.
He was fighting against more than just the other guys out there. His equipment was definitely hurting him, and that was why he just kept pushing.
And we knew Greg could do more than what he was doing that year. I mean, he was just overdriving the car, just trying to overcome the lack of power on his car.
The frustration affected his driving, I believe. Had to, because he just had to push so hard to try to keep up.
But hope was on the horizon. In August, Greg signed a 3-year contract with Roger Penske.
That's really the place to be. That's the team. They have the most money, the biggest sponsors, the most budget, the best equipment, and there's no doubt about it that the Marlboro Team Penske is one of the strongest teams in the sport.
He deserved that success because of the hardship he put up with in those different, those 98, 99 seasons working with that uncompetitive stuff. He deserved that, and it's one of the hardest things. He never got a chance to do that.
TSN Profile is brought to you by Castrol Syntec, the active lubricant.
When Greg Moore signed with Team Penske, it was the beginning of a new chapter in more ways than one. Steve Chalice, his mentor and friend, would not go with him.
I just got my family into Indy and got schools and the kids, getting everything settled down.
Steve had gotten to a point where it was saying, okay, I've got to look to the future, I've got to look after my family, I've got to do what's right for Steve, not just what's right for Greg.
Chalice decided that in 2000, he would work with Team Cool Green.
It was the hardest thing I ever did, for sure. No doubt about it.
Players Forsyth decided that if Steve was leaving, he should do it right away.
It was important for us to concentrate on trying to build the infrastructure of the team around somebody other than Steve and Greg. And as a result of that, we felt that it was best for Steve to sit out the remainder of the season and for us to bring on some of our junior engineers in order to get them better prepared for the year 2000.
After the signing with Penske and the departure of Chalice, Players' season did not get any better. To top it off, at the last race of '99, Greg got injured the day before qualifying.
It was a horrible weekend for Greg. It all started wrong with his little scooter accident. I just know that he hit a park or a car that was moving from his parking slot.
He was all bruised up, and he was making fun and showing me because he knew that I hate to see scratches and stuff, so he would show up in my bus, hey, look at this.
He came through the bus and he's sitting there with his hand. I was like, what? What's going on? He's like, oh, he told me the whole story. I said, you going to drive? He's like, hell yeah.
Moore missed qualifying and as a result would start at the back of the pack.
We both started at the back of the grid, and we both knew we had strong cars, and the last thing he said to me on the grid was, I'll see you at the front.
Greg Moore is flying. He came from the last row all the way up to 17th.
He had a really good car, and soon into the race realized that he had a car to win.
During that race, for some reason, he was really aggressive.
What happened with Greg that day, he tried to demonstrate that he could make a big show and show the fan that he can do it with one hand, and he can start from the back, and he's going to reach the front as soon as he can.
Moore now to 50th.
The last time I saw Greg going by me was 3 abreast in corner 1, and I shook my head and said, what he's doing? I mean, it's too early to do that kind of move. It's too risky.
I saw, Greg passing me in the outside, and, here Greg goes again, and I knew it. I mean, it wasn't a surprise for me because I knew that was his style.
I mean, really, about the last thing that he said to any of us was, God damn, this is fun.
Oh, an enormous crash. Oh, my God.
I was watching it with my son. It was Halloween, so he was just getting ready to go trick-or-treating. And I just saw the blue car coming flashing across, and I knew right away he was dead. And my boy was 5, and he turned to me and just said, Daddy, was that Greg Moore? I said, yeah.
Greg Moore was dead at 24.
At the end of the race, I jumped out of the car, and my team owner took me aside and told me, and I couldn't believe it was something that you say, no, it's not true. It's just a dream. I'm going to wake up in the morning, and he's going to be there. And all of a sudden, I saw Dario. All of a sudden, I saw Max, and that's the way it is.
Some questioned the wisdom of driving with an injury. Others pointed to the uneven terrain that launched his car into the wall. But no answer would ease the pain.
It's so hard because Greg was such a good friend of ours.
I'm so sad. There is no word, there is nothing.
The last words I ever said to him was, I love you. And it's just hard to lose him. And it's hard to, face every day knowing he's not going to be there. It is.
Greg's a guy that only comes along once in anybody's life, I think. That was a privilege to know him.
I'd rather to have gone through what I have gone through than not know him.
Greg is gone for us now. But for us, who knew him well, I know what he'd be saying. Hey guys, lighten up, have some fun. Remember me as I was. A regular guy, had a great job. I love people, love life. I never felt I was better than anybody else. I was lucky to have the best job in the world, great friends and family, and I really lived my 24 years to the fullest.
The Greg Moore Foundation was formed in Greg's memory to help some of the causes he believed in. Children's hospitals, a leukemia center, and a youth complex in Maple Ridge, BC. Greg is remembered at golf tournaments at the Canadian Indy events each year, and he's remembered each day by those who knew and loved him. For Profile, I'm Rod Black.